Okay, so Andres, thank you so much for meeting with us today. We are having you in the name under the name of the project, the role of waste and forest fires, community-based awareness and solution strategies. This project is financially supported by Union and implemented by UNDP within the scope of Civic Engagement Small Grant Program. So, in this project, we are generally interested in waste in forests and how they are related with wildfires. But as we mentioned before, this is a very wide topic, and we are at this point of the project we are interested in any type of contribution of waste and forests. So I think you're gonna talk about soil and waste in general. So the floor is yours. Thanks again.
Thank you for invitation. And I will begin to share.
Let me give you the permission. I think I need to give you.
Okay,
Yeah, I did now. Yeah.
I need to share. You can see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Let me put there. Okay, thank you for invitation to present there. Thank you, Sedat, for inviting me here. This presentation wait, is related about the impact of plastics and microplastics as wastes on the focuses on agricultural soils, but also on the forest fires on forest soils, because I will show you after some information. First of all, I am the Rodriguez Seijo. I am researcher at the University of Vigo in Spain, and this talk is called Small Particles, Big Problem, Microplastics, Environmental Waste. Let me to put this one to remove. I don't know. I don't know how to get this. Anyway, this. Wait, let me to play again.
Is there anything I can help with?
No. Well, we know that that's well, we are living in a plastic age, and that because more than 400 million of tons of plastic are produced worldwide every year. Figure that is increasing a lot every year. As you can see here in the graph, that really we are on exponential rate of increasing plastic every year, because we have all kind of applications that we can imagine. Around 90% of the plastics have really a fossil fuel origin, that because it's the conventional plastic more used, especially because they are cheap and very useful, and also very easy to produce. But despite some new plastics or bioplastics or even recycled plastic have been used in the last years, but they are a minority because they have some problems that we'll explain after. Plastics are very difficult to recycle because they often lose their original properties after recycling and produce recycled materials of low quality, or become sometimes co-contaminated. That the plastic recycling is not very easy. And in fact, most of the plastics that we use have a very short life, because it's only to use 1, 2, or 3 times, no more. And really, if you imagine the plastic for packaging or for any kind of use, if you put the amount of time that you will use, is usually like minutes or less than 1, 2 hours. And initially, well, in some papers indicated that the plastics are used around 2 years, more or less, but no more. And after the most of produced plastics really are for packaging or non reusable items. Now it's clear that plastics are present in the multiple environments, especially microplastics and also mesoplastics, and they're present on a global scale once they are distributed in all ecosystems, even in human body. That's because we are now that we are ingesting them and they are incorporated in our body. Really, the potential source for plastics are growing. Many sources are still unknown. In fact, we have infinite plastic source. We have textile fibers, cosmetic cleaning products, building plastic pellets, healthcare environment, agricultural and packaging sources, fermentation of layer items, tobacco, and recently paints of tire of abrasion of major plastic sources. In fact, this is the traditional plastic sources that we mentioned before, that initially the plastic uses in the agricultural and industrial uses, disposable plastics, fishings. After this, the research was focused on the use of amendments in agriculture as a plastic source, especially on Savaç sludge. But also they found that really the most plastics are from microfibers, that from textile and washing, transported by Savaç sludge on Savaç water and also aerosols. The COVID pandemic is still a question that was not very clear about who is the impact on the environment, but especially about tire degradation with the release of microfibers. However, in the last years was indicated that also paints have a big amount of plastics in the environment, especially due to the use of plastic painters that with the degradation will be related to the environment, but also other, especially about the microplastics that will become microplastics with time. On the last years was indicated a new plastic frontiers like plastic coated fertilizers, because they are also well used on the modern agriculture, because they are called controlled release fertilizer or slow release fertilizer, because they are nutrient granules wrapped in usually in a polymer that will be slowly release the nutrients to the soil to have a slow release fertilization to become more useful for the plants. And they're commonly used on agricultural or gardening or any kind of use that we have with the fertilizers. And the problem of this plastic coating that are not usually biodegradable after the nutrients are released, and the plastic coat can be released there in the environment. In fact, these shell fragments are becoming of the microplastic with the time and remaining in the soil. And in fact, the repeated use of this kind of fertilizers will be accumulated in the plastic residues over the time in agricultural soils. Moreover, we indicated one potential source for plastics in the last year, that is about the related warfare and shooting activities as a new potential source of plastics and other contaminants to agricultural areas and not only to agricultural areas. In fact, this question has been widely to the news with the Ukraine war, but also now with the Iran invasion. That is also this kind of problem is also highlighted. If you find, for example, on a shooting range or military areas or any kind of warfare areas, you can recognize that are areas highly polluted by inorganic and organic contaminants. But the possible contamination of by plastics and microplastics have been widely overlooked, despite they have many kind of potential plastic sources, such as shotgun cartridge, plastic wads, polymer-bound explosive, landmines, or threads for the construction bags. For example, in the Baltic Sea, the plastic wads are the second source of plastics that you can find in beaches. And in European Union, it amounts the top 10 of plastic wastes in the environment. In fact, this is a significant risk to the agricultural areas after a warfare scenario, especially by the contamination by several kinds of pollutants and easy dispersion by the wind and water erosion. In this kind of areas, we can have different kinds of contaminants, especially inorganic and organic contaminants like heavy metals, also TNT, MX or EDX, other kinds of organic contaminants. And we have a new contaminant that is incorporated to the soil and unknown doses, and new contaminants can absorb and unabsorb, or these contaminants can act as contaminant carriers. In fact, this is a main problem on the Ukraine because they are using all fishing nets to avoid the impact of drones, because these fishing nets will be catch the drones and avoid the hitting them by the drones. And this is a problem because now the roads of Ukraine are covered by a lot of fishing nets over the whole country, especially on the most impacted areas. And will be an impact for the future, especially when these nets will be broken by the activity, by the impact of the drones, and will be released to the environment, and also will be contaminated with different kinds of warfare contaminants. In fact, the drones now, they change the words, both in all kinds of warfare, especially now in Ukraine, and also we can saw on Iran, United States warfare, because they are a new point, but they are also a new contaminant and source, because this they transformed the dynamics of the warfare, and they changed all warfare because they are cheap, no have problems with health issues, because now have a soldier that will be killed and can be take a long time, far kilometers, because without being detected and with reduced risk. But some of them that they show it in the Ukraine, that some of them that use optical cables are up to 20 kilometers long for remote control and anti-jamming. And this kind of covers that you can find here in the downside photography will have a long-term contamination of agricultural areas. As you can see in the pictures, the cables now is like a jungle. You can find areas widely covered by these kind of cables that are cable fiber, and usually are polymers or glass optical fiber that will be released in the field, and sometimes they have other kind of contaminants like PFAS or other kind of contaminants that their impacts are being underestimated. Even the glass fire can be a pollution on the source with impacts on the source properties, but both fires, both glass fire or polymer fires, will have risk to the soil and biota when they are left in the field. In fact, the collection and recycling remain limited and they may utopia, especially in the particle in agricultural areas, because there are a lot of cable fibers that are there. Really, we are only in the beginning of understanding how microplastics affect to the soils, and the potential long-term consequences are still a question that we are beginning to know. Although we have been aware of the problem of microplastics in water since the 70s decade, especially like in the last 25 years, research on microplastics and in soils is very recent, less than 10 to 15 years. Microplastics research in soil have been increased recently, especially since in the last 8 years, when the first studies with the soil organisms show their ecotoxical effects that have on them. And despite this increased research, we are only in the beginning to understand how microplastics affect to the soils and affect to the organisms. As mentioned before, microplastics originated from multiple sources, of which we don't know well about them, but they have vertical and horizontal transport in the soil, both by organisms or also by the activity that we have there. The accumulation rates and the degradation dynamics under realistic field conditions remain poorly quantified. For example, how the soil organisms can impact on microplastic movement, passive carriers, or even on degradation due to evasion by worms. That is a question that should be studied because they can be even increased the microplastic impacts on them, on the wastes that we have there. Moreover, we don't have a methodological harmonization because it's not very easy to understand a potential harmonization. Main extraction techniques of microplastic and nanoplastic from complex matrices like soil, compost, TC have been developed in the last 5-6 years. Several techniques have been adapted from water and from sediments, but the problem that in water and sediment you don't have the problem you have in the soil, especially about the organic matter or the aluminium oxides or other kind of issues that we have there. In fact, we don't have a standardized harmonized protocol even for sampling, extraction, purification, identification of soil microplastics. In fact, we don't have a clear definition about soil depth because if you find in the papers, you can find that some researchers were focused on the first 5 centimeters of soil, go to the 10, 20, 30, or even to the 50 centimeters of soil. We don't have an harmonization or standardization of them. Also, the soil sampling methodology is not have a good definition because some of them is stratified, aleatory, the amount of soil that we use it, the soil extraction technique, or even identification methods. Last year, we published with Sedat a paper about this with a comprehensive review of analytical techniques because the protocols have been focused on waters but not on soil. And in fact, in the soil have more complex than waters due to the interaction with sources and material organic matter. In fact, there is not a gold standard method to avoid use with the organic matter. It depends of the soil that you have, more or less, because we don't have a standard protocol that we can use for all kinds of soils about this problem. Now we are working with soil from Finland that is a nightmare about the amount of organic matter that we have there. And we need to adapt the protocol of each kind of soil we have there. In fact, also they have methodological biases, particularly that affect to detection of small particles when reduced of 50 micrometers and also nanoplastic. That methodology that we have there is not very good to detect them, that we have problems with them. And also they have big limitations because despite to these advances on the last years, back because the operational parameters can be very different, potential damage of microplastics that can be limited the identification, adherence to clay particles, lower recovery from small microplastics from high organic soils. The methodology are not good for high density microplastics. Whatever, we have a lot of problems that we have there with this kind of plastics. Regarding to the impacts of soil fauna that we have, they are very different really because we have inconsistent results regarding to the ingestion, toxicity, and behavioral changes. In general, we don't have mortality of by plastics. That means that if we feed worms with plastics or any kind of organism with plastics, probably will not die. Okay, but the problem is that will be indirect affect them and will be die. In fact, they have several impacts at physiological level, reproduction, or even oxidative stress parameters. The reproduction usually is impacted, it reduces, and that will be a problem under long-term generation. They have changes at physiological level. For example, you have here two examples of the impacts of plastics on worms that we published on some years ago. That plastic can be incorporated on the digestive tooth. Also, can be have impacts on the production of proteins or lipids or even with gases that we have impacted by the plastic them, and especially on oxidative stress parameters because it's an stress, it's an strange particle that they have there, and the organisms will be act against them and will be spend more energy and instead to be reproduction or even in the life, and will be have a problem with the time. Studies have been focused with the worms, but not other organisms have been needed also to be assessed that we show after. And we have a limited knowledge about the potential multi-generational or even with adaptive responsiveness of organisms. Moreover, the effects of microbial diversity and soil enzyme activities are variable and often persistent, and we have also inconsistent results. In fact, we have a big problem because we don't have studies with long-term exposure, like more than 3 months, 6 months, because usually all research have been focused on a small time of research, like 1 month, 3 months, some of them. Or even with the field conditions, we don't have several studies with field conditions. We have a big problem about this. As showed before, I've mentioned before that this is a paper that we published 3 years ago. That okay, the research was focused on the worms because they are organisms with a good size to work, and we have a big standardization methods, both ISO or CTE. They are easy to fit with the plastics. Even you can put plastic markers with relative isotopes. But what happened with Collembola or Inchitrates, nematodes, Tadrigata, or even protists? We don't know so much about them. In fact, the study the effects is more complex due to absence of standardization methodology, the size, because you cannot use big size and you need to use a very, very small size like nanoplastics, and the effect will be very different and not easy sometimes even to detect. But what happened with the organisms? In this review, we show that the effects are very similar to the shown by the worms. In fact, not so many will be died, but the problem are related to the oxidative stress parameters, to the reproduction, and also when the plastics are co-contaminated by heavy metals or organic contaminants. That is very common in the environment and will be exacerbate the plastic impact. In fact, this is a big problem that we have there because in the environment, well, the laboratory studies usually use the virgin plastic that is only the plastic there, but in the environment you will find plastics usually contaminated and the impact will be increased. What happened in the soil? They have different kind of effects, but in general, when the plastics are like fibers or films, that fibers are like the most common plastic you can find. In general, the plastic will be affect to the soil aggregate formation and their stability. The shape will be play a key role on by increasing the soil porosity, while pellets or beds can be clog the pore spaces. The plastics typically have a lower density than the soil particles, so the accumulation tends to reduce the soil density and increase the porosity. But some of them can be hydrophobic and can be affect the water dynamics, leading to increase the water evaporation and reduce the water availability for plants. no clear tendency on soil pH or electrical conductivity, because some of them, even with the same polymer, can be increased or decreased the soil pH. But in general, they have changed on soil nutrients to the impacts on soil bacteria and have there, but even no clear effects with the long-term effects, because we need more information about them. That because most of the studies are being focused on 1, 2, 3 months, no more. But what happened with the long term? This is a big problem that we need to know. What happened with the plants? With the plants is very interesting topic that in the last years they changed the information. Initially with the plants, the plastics have a potential reduction on germination and early growth. Okay. They have problems also because they detected they have problems on root physiology and morphology. In some of them cases, they have problems both on the physiological and biochemical stress, especially at photosynthetic level. They have a big interaction with the soil community, and when there's meaning of the soil reservoir, we have a big problems there. And in fact, until some years ago, was thinking that plastics were not uptaken by plants because they have a big size, and the plants have a very small pores. But when are nanoplastics, they can be uptaken by roots and leaves, and the translocation can be happened, especially when they have very small size, when are usually like nanoplastics. Therefore, we have a potential risk for food safety and also for the human health by the potential bioaccumulation of the plastics there, especially on leaves and also on some kind of fruits. This is a paper that from the last year where it was indicated the pathway of the plastics in the agricultural areas, that like when at the wastes, but especially with airborne microplastics, because can be uptaken by the stomach and can be incorporated on the plants and also on the kind of plant tissues, even in the fruits. Therefore, the plastics can be ingested by us or by the animals and can be incorporated on the food web. As mentioned, they have a big problems because they can act as a carrier of contaminants, because plastic are very porous and they can incorporate several kinds of contaminants, both inorganic and organic contaminants. In the last years, was highlighted that the interaction of with contaminants and also with the disease, about the antibiotic resistance on agricultural soils. In fact, plastic can absorb very easy and co-transport several kinds of contaminants, both heavy metals, pesticides, or antibiotics, a problem in the agricultural areas. Plastics can act a hotspot for antibiotic resistance and horizontal genes transfer by providing biofilm surface that favor the microbial exchange. And also, this issue is considered vital in the agricultural ecosystem with multiple agricultural pollutants and the possibility of antibiotics and antimicrobial resistance genes. In fact, nearly of 50% of the research with microplastic antibiotics and ARGs having focused on 3 or 4 antibiotics, but we need more research what will happen with the interaction with other antibiotics and other contaminants to know what happened with this. And alternative materials need also improvement. The application of biodegradable mulches or biodegradable plastic, especially in agriculture, have been focused like an alternative because they can be produced from natural agricultural wastes, for example, from potato starch, corn, or other kinds of agricultural products. And initially, they say that don't have the same problems that the conventional mulch. Really, the problems that we cannot say that are better or they are worse. They have different kind of problems. Biodegradable materials offer eco-friendly options, but with different kind of degradation rates. Some the biodegradable plastics still produce microplastics and require specific conditions to degrade. They say that microplastics, biodegradable plastics will be degraded in 2 years. This is fake news. And biodegradable materials can have a similar toxicity to the conventional plastics, and there's different kind of environment, but usually you can put biodegradable versus conventional to solar organisms. The effects are very similar sometimes. In fact, the biodegradable plastics that is carbon source in some cases can improve the microbial activity because it's a source of carbon that we put in them, and it's a feed that we have there, and sometimes can be improved. Sometimes can be improve the water retention or even reduce the microplastic pollution, and to even enhance the soil fertility. But the problem that is not they have a negative impacts or unclear impacts due to the rapid degradation or even what happened with the native cycle that is not very clear. But they have also a big affinity for contaminants, and they can affect on the plant biomass, and also they have a high cost that we have there. In fact, the different kind of plastic can have different kind of we cannot say that bioplastics are better or are worse. They have depends. Okay, they have different kind of advantage, and they can have a risk that we needed to measure them. We need more research on them. In fact, different kind of bacteria and fungal species have been proposed as potential degraders of plastics, especially polyethylene, PET, or different kind of biodegradable plastics like PLA or PVAT. Science plastics are mainly composed by carbon, like more than 80% of plastic are carbon, and that can serve an energy source. However, they have different kinds of uncertainties with wherever these microorganisms can effectively degrade other polymers that we have in the terrestrial environmental conditions. Some studies show that algae bacteria consortia can enhance the degradation rates through the oxygenation, segregation of extracellular enzymes or biofilm formation. That is a research area that will be focused because can be used both especially algae bacteria consortia to degrade plastics, and also under a focus of genetic engineering and direct evolution of being applied to enhance the enzymic activity like PTAs, cutinas that can improve the plastic degradation, or even the same synthetic microbial consortia with high negative efficiency. That lab scale having worked well, but with the field experiments we don't know so much about how can improve them and can work them. In fact, we have several things that we need to improve to understand. And in fact, because we have problems, because no complete biodegradation of these plastics, and some of them can increase even the microplastics or nanoplastics, because the problem that is the long chains and the polymer chains, that some of them are not very easy to degrade. We are working now on different projects. One of them is a bioservices project that is an Horizon European project that we have. I will show them that have 22 partners from 11 countries in European Union and also associated countries. That the main objective is to understand interconnection between soil organisms, between virus, bacteria, archaea, fungi, protists, nematodes, microtropes, organisms, soap, millipedes, all kind of soil organisms, except enchytrates that we are not measuring, but we are measuring all. And also the relationship with the delivery of soil multiple ecosystem functions and services at different scales, both field and landscape, to identify the pressures and drivers resulting from different land use and climate change, and performing economic evaluation. Well, we have 25 experimental sites across Europe in 5 pedoclimatic regions, where in these areas we have different kind of land uses like agricultural, mining, semi-natural areas, forests, soils. We have also urban areas and one more that I don't remember now. But in this area, in these areas, we have different kind of pressures. Understanding of the pressures like a management, high, middle, and low pressure. So the management. And we are in these areas. We are measuring. We collected 10 points by the land use and intensity. We collected the first 20 centimeters of the soil to measure more than 95 soil health indicators, both physical, chemical, and biological indicators. In total, it's 770 samples across Europe with this kind of different land uses and intensity that we have there. And we've across the different contaminants, we focused on the heavy metals, nitrates, phosphate, pesticides, 77 compounds, and also microplastics. Well, we showed that we find that the potential toxic elements we have different between land uses and intensities, mainly related to the potential contamination source. The pesticides are measured in our lands and uses and are mainly related to agricultural forests and urban areas. No big difference between the intensities, both a number of pesticide amounts, because they are widespread, and in fact they have a highly persistent of DDT related compounds. But related with microplastics was interesting because we found that we widely distributed across all land uses, especially on agricultural and urban areas, except mining and wetland areas that they are rare or are reduced. In fact, we don't find yet significant difference between intensities, because sometimes the less intensity area can have more plastics from the source that were not contemplated before. In these soils, for example, we have some soils from urban uses located in Bonn in Germany, and we have urban areas that we have high intensity, medium, and low intensity according to the management. Interestingly, in the area of less intensity that should be controlled, we find a lot of microplastics there because they was near to the football pitch or the artificial grass, and the area where they collected the soil were an area where different kind of players, students, and people that was playing to football there was passed there, and in the shoes they was adhered the different kind of fibers from the football pitch. And this is a big problem because now we have the less intensity with the more highest content of plastics. This is a question that uncontemplated source can be a source of plastics there. We'll show briefly the main result that we found there in our area. That in one area we have in Ourense we have a urban area with different kind of intensities that we have there. We have agricultural soil from vineyards, semi-natural areas that previously was agricultural, and there are different kind of forest, wetland areas, and also a quarry mine area. And we extracted and identified the microplastics from different soil samples and their different use intensities. They are preliminary results because they are pending to be measured at sites and final identification by EFTIR. But 85% of the plastics are fibers in all areas, and we don't find very big difference between land uses. Even the low intensity areas have a big amount of plastics that, because they are a pedestrian field where people can go there and take wastes to the field and remains there, and it also related is near to a river, and the river can take the plastic up on waters and to be there. Even the higher intensity, we find more macroplastics than the other ones. That in fact they are widespread measure macroplastics. Interestingly, on the agricultural areas, that the management was focused on the application of herbicides and different kinds of management I have there. We don't find significant difference between land uses, also with meso macroplastics there, but we find several plastics, meso macroplastics related to the vineyard management, especially plastic ties for vineyards that we find a lot, and some plastic coated fertilizers that pending to be confirmed by Earth. On mining areas that with a quarry mine soil, we don't find several amount of plastics, but the plastic what we find was mainly related to the wastes from the quarry activities. They take a bottle, they take a big tire from a lorry that was in the field and will be degraded with the time. And we find there, in fact, different kind of intensities, similar amount of plastics. And also very similar also in the semi-natural and the well-done, that main contents were related to the land use near to the road, potential wastes, and also from the small rivers, water erosion and flooding. Thank you for Ministerio de Ciencia e Innovación y Universidades by the Ramón y Cajal contract, and also to the Bioservices project that is allowing us to continue with the research but now I'm focused a bit on soil biodiversity. I'm not working so much on the plastics, but I spent sometimes working with them, especially with long-term experiments on plants, trying to see what happened in the soil with this interaction. And I will show briefly a project that we are working now, that is a Erasmus Plus project. We have it's called 5G Stop Forest Fire for 5 Ring. That is an Erasmus Plus project that we are carrying out with students from the secondary schools. In this project, you know that climate change is intensifying heat waves and droughts, and the forest that is home to biodiversity, but they are very impacted by forest fires. We recognize the link between climate change and forest fire and discover the richness of our ecosystems and the importance. And in this project, we are trying to develop a digital platform for environmental learning, a virtual reforestation game, and a digital book of forest ecosystem, an interactive digital map for fires and biodiversity to be used for different schools across Europe, and to be useful and to incorporate in their teaching during the secondary school, to provide them scientific material for put in the classrooms and improve their knowledge about the forest fires, about and about the wildfire that we have there. The project is coordinated by University of Vigo. We have different kinds of partners that we include universities, NGO, and schools from Germany, Finland, Greece, Turkey, and also Italy that we have working with them. And probably could be useful also for your work, and probably come in some months we hope to release some information about the digital booklet for the students that will be useful also for all kinds of students across Europe.
Thank you so much, Andres. And I think all of us has questions with your work. I want to start with Gökhan. Do you have some questions?
Nurbahar sen yönlendirdiğim soruları sen sorabilir misin?
Okay, yeah. Okay, I will start with the questions. Well, I have a question. Well, you briefly mentioned it in your presentation about the trophic transfer of pollutants, but I wanna ask a little bit for a little bit detail. Do we have any knowledge about the trophic transfer of these pollutants in forest ecosystems? Like, yes, or we talked about worms, and you mentioned that plant intake, but do we know further degrees of this transfer? For example, and then like reptiles and birds. That do we have that kind of information available on the literature yet?
Yeah, yes, we have several kind of information, especially on bears, because as you saw in the presentation from Ukraine, some bears are using the plastic nets and the plastic traps to use their birds that have there to be there to their homes, and they are using them. And in fact, in some of them, and you have in the literature, you can find very easily that bears they take in the plastics and because they think they are food. In fact, in the forest, they have big problems related because are usually highly organic matter content related areas that the plastics come them sometimes can be trapped there. There are sometimes how to say long far areas that are outside potential contamination source, and you can think, oh, they are free of contaminants, and no, they are not free of contaminants, especially the plastics that can be transferred by the air or even by the water. I show in the bioservices project we have an area that is part of every kind of potential sources, and we find plastics there right there, and easily can be uptaken by the organisms very easily because they can uptake it well, thinking that their food is not food, and also they can transfer across the food web. Probably more. This is more no under agricultural areas because in agricultural areas are more studied. Mainly, is the main reason they are more studied.
Yeah.
But in the forest, they have the same problems that we have in agricultural areas or even urban areas. The food transfer, the contamination across the food transfer, the food web is the same or quite similar, and this is a big problem really because in the forest areas we don't know so much about them.
Yeah.
Regarding to the trees, if the trees can uptake the plastics, usually yes, because they have more spaces and the ports to take the plastics there. But we don't have several studies about them because it's not easy to fit with plastic a tree and to
Yeah.
process. But I know that some researchers were working with vineyards. They put wine trees in the small pots and develop a study of 2 3 years, I think, and they found that can be uptaken the plastics there, and even and especially for example in vineyards that you have they have the vineyard, no? And the plastics are contaminated by with copper, then we increase them. And in a forest is a similar also. In fact, in some of them, almost in Spain, probably in Turkey the same, or the countries the same. The forest areas are places to go to the wastes.
Exactly. That is our point with this project. Yeah.
Yeah. They go to the forest to with the wastes because nobody see you there, taking a lot of the wastes there and put the wastes there, and these wastes will be degraded there. And these wastes sometimes are electronic, not electronic, normal wastes, agricultural wastes.
Everything is in the forest.
amazing, but will be there and will be degraded with the time, and also can be transferred to the food web. In fact, I focused on the plastics, but the problem have the similar for all of them. In the case of Ukraine war, it's very interesting because Ukraine have the most fertile soils in Europe, that is xenotherms, because they are organic matter content, and they have a lot of nutrients there. Now with the plastic of the drones or the plastic nets or the whatever, this is very impact on the agricultural areas, and in fact they are feed of a lot of food that produce them. Also in the forest areas that they have in Ukraine, I saw some months ago that they have same problems also, because usually these areas are used for the troops to be there, to be outside the drone, that the drone cannot be there. After when the war ends one day, these areas will be polluted also by the inorganic and organic contaminants, but also by the plastic, for example, that we there. And will be a problem because they are very organic matter content there. They have a different kind of nutrients there, and will be polluted also the different kind of areas.
Maybe we can even speculate that in a climate where, like Ukraine, doesn't have occasional wildfires, even that pollution can affect.
They have wildfires and they have a lot of
They
them.
have, they have, but like it's not like a Mediterranean frequency wildfire, but maybe with this plastic pollution, we can expect some increase in the frequency of wildfires, maybe even with the size of it, you know?
In some years, due to climate change, will be Mediterranean wildfires.
Yeah.
In this other project that is 5G, was in the September in Finland, in the project meeting there. Was interesting because they said we don't have very big wildfires. It's like it's a small wildfire for us. And they mentioned it there but the problem they have there, because there are peatlands there, and the wildfires is a small area, but will be a lot time that will be wildfire there. And in fact, the contaminants that we have there will be the same problem. Even with the small wildfires, we have the same problem we have there.
Yeah.
And no, it's not very easy.
Maybe it's a speculation, but I also assume that since all the birds use this fiber optic cables to build their nests in Ukraine and that kind of areas, maybe in the future in Iran also, maybe there will be some physiological effect on developing of these baby birds or something. That's kind of a speculation, but I think there must be an effect.
We don't know so much because
We
it's
don't
not
know,
possible to go there. And we don't know so much, but in fact that we find that they have very big areas of agricultural areas that is covered by the plastic nets or with the carbon fibers that we degraded there. And it's a big problem now about the plastics, but especially in forest area that is a nightmare now.
Since you mentioned that in Spain you have same problem too, like people dump their waste in the forest areas. I mean,
not only in Spain,
not only in Spain, yeah. But I know that Spain and Turkey has different forest governance structure because all of the forest in Turkey managed by the state itself. I think in Spain, some of the 50% of it, I think, are owned by individuals. So how does this affect this?
Not really,
not
because
50.
No, because the structure of ownership is very different. For example, in our region, forests are managed mainly by individual persons.
Yeah.
It's because they are small areas really of forest. Well, small areas. There are a lot of forests, but small
units of management.
of forest, and it's managed by each one. And they have now a problem of rural abandonment, and also the people left the rural and go to the cities and forget where are the places that they have there, and the problems have increased. In other areas of Spain is different because they have public forest
Mhm.
that is managed usually by the community or by the local municipality, or even with some neighbors that they join to manage them, and they do the cuts and the earn money will go to the
Yeah.
people there.
Mhm.
They have different kinds of structure, different
Mhm.
in
Mhm.
Spain.
Uh,
And this not easy sometimes to manage them about
yeah, yeah.
they have problems with that.
Definitely, both of them has their own problems. I think when it's completely centralized, then you don't have in our case we don't have any like enough work power to clean everywhere. So it is completely harder to uh, basically clean the forest. So do you know or like do you have any idea of what type of forest cleaning activities? Maybe it's not cleaning, but by reducing this type of waste from forest areas in Spain. Do you have any examples, or like do they vary by state, or like city by city, forest by forest? I assume it changed, but do you have any examples for us? No.
No, not so much really,
Okay.
because
Okay.
sometimes the cleaning is very different between areas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is true. This is true. Sedat, do you have a question? If not, I can continue to ask.
Yeah, I have one question to
Okay,
Andres.
go ahead.
So, Andres, as you mentioned that we have very common problem with the waste dumping inside the rural areas. So, do you think that is there any specific legislation for this focused on the waste dumping in forest area in terms of protecting that wild ecosystems? Because as I know, some of the European forests are like very specific, very special forests. Like in Poland, the oldest forest on the earth, located at Poland. But as I know, there is also illegal dumping problem in Poland and also in Germany, even in Germany, and
Uh,
which
I,
has a very sophisticated waste management system. So, can you have any example on that?
I think that is illegal in all countries, but
No, well, yeah, but common.
the problem is common and not easy to manage this because the forest is very big and you cannot put a door to avoid the people go there,
Yeah.
and it's not easy to manage them. In fact, when I was in the Finland with the project, they mentioned it as on the boreal areas that they have the same problem. Even in Finland, that is like
Even in yeah,
the intelligence of Europe,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they have a big the same problem with this. I was living in Lithuania with working there, and they have a similar issues with this, with the wastes that we have there. In fact, carry out a legislation about this, for example, carry out a legislation about this kind of wastes is not easy. It's more probably more easy to work on the people and to put like clean points to give your rubbish, but it's not easy because it's more easy and cheap. Go put in the car and go there.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, and in fact, this kind of dumping sites are usually focused of a source of wildfires because they can degrade, they can sometimes can be burned to not put the people there, and not easy. I know that in our region some years ago, the regional government they focuses on this kind of areas to go there because sometimes some neighborhoods that they burned these things to burn to avoid to be there, and they focuses on them. They was cleaning, blah, 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 but not easy to with the people, and it's not easy really.
Yeah, yeah. I have one final question turning into a more biological and ecosystem level of the effects of pollutants, which is that do we have any information about how does the burning plastics affect living organisms, especially in natural ecosystems. Do we have any research on that, or it is just general effect of smoke? I mean, we know that smoke, like carbon monoxide, affects the health of ecosystems very poorly. So, is there any specifics on burning plastics?
Oof, with the warning plastics, we have a lot of problems. We have about the degradation of them and the release of the toxic elements that is related to the plastics because it's petrol that you have there, basically. And you have a lot of problems with the burnet.
Yeah.
But really, the most studies are carried out with the virgin plastics because it's more easy, not with burnet, but the problems are a bit worse, really.
Thank you so much for meeting with us today. I will stop the recording now.
You're welcome.